So I want to solve this equation, which means I want to get that x completely by itself. So I have to somehow separate this negative 1/3 that's being multiplied by the x and this positive 10 that's on that side. It might even help to rearrange this. So when you're combining like terms, you should know that you're allowed to rearrange a term, like this term. You're allowed to rearrange the order. So I'm allowed to bring that up to the front and change this into the back, and that's basically adding 10. It's a positive 10. You can imagine a plus sign in front of that, although it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. That looks like we're adding it to something, which we kind of are. This expression has a positive 10 being added to it. It's got a negative 1/3 x being subtracted from it, if you want to say it that way. But those two terms are trying to be combined. They're not like terms, so I can't combine them. But when you are combining like terms, you see this pretty often where you rearrange terms and that sign comes with it. That negative sign or minus sign comes with this term. That positive 10 carries a plus sign with it. So my first step is canceling out that positive 10. Even though I see this subtraction here, that subtraction applies to this term. This has a positive sign attached to it, so I'm going to cancel that out by minusing 10 on both sides. And you might notice I brought that negative sign up to the top. You can leave it out in front if you want. You could bring it to the bottom. You can't put it on both, because a negative divided by a negative would be a positive. But I just prefer to have it on top. And my next step, I could do a couple different things. I see multiplication here. So I could divide by this decimal. But an easier step is actually multiplying by this fraction flipped upside down. Let's say I had 4/5. To make that fraction basically canceled out, I would want to have this end up as a 1. I want to multiply this by something to change it into 1. It's the reciprocal. These two fractions are reciprocals of each other because they're basically just flip versions of each other. When you multiply straight across, you'd get 20 over 20, which just equals 1. And that's exactly what I'm going to think about. I'm going to think about this fraction flipped upside down. 3 on top, negative 1 on the bottom. And if I do it on this side, I also have to do it on this side. These end up canceling out completely. And that gives me x equals, really what this is saying is negative 9 over 1 times 3 over negative 1, where you would multiply straight across, you'd get negative 27 over negative 1, and then you could divide that, changing that into a positive 27. Another way you could also think about this, 3 divided by negative 1 is really just a negative 3. So you'd multiply those two together and still give you a positive 27.